Hey, it's Casey Barros here, and this is Next of Kin. Welcome. Oh, I am so excited to be in your ears right now. This project has been a long time coming, partially because I'm about 2 years behind on any given trend, but also because I hate adding to the noise. So what you'll get as part of the Next of Kin family is conversations that I hope are thoughtful and thought-provoking with me and leading experts, as well as people who just have a story to tell on how we can all live happier, healthier, longer lives in the hope that we share what we learn with the people that we love most. My mission in life is to give you as much time with the people that you love as humanly possible. And for the first episode, I'm joined by habit change expert and all-round glorious human being, Dr. Gina Cleo. She started off as a dietitian and learned very quickly that habits were the missing piece of the puzzle when it comes to making any sort of lasting behaviour change. I love Gina. I know that you will too, and I cannot wait to hear what you think of this episode. So buckle up, strap in, and enjoy. Here's Gina. Dr. Gina Cleo. Who is your next of kin? Who are you next of kin to?
Do I just get to pick one?
No, you can pick as many as you want.
Okay, the first person that comes to mind is my husband, Mitch. And the reason why I asked if I can pick more than one is because oftentimes I don't remember his phone number off by heart. So then I'll write down my mum, who's my other next of kin and also the second closest person to me in the world.
That's nice. So you've got your mum, you've got your dad. Do you have siblings?
I have a brother in America, but he wouldn't so much be my next of kin, but my besties would be. So I've got two besties and we've been besties for like 22 years. We're on a three-way chat that goes every day. So they are definitely my heart and soul.
Oh, that's so important. They're your sisters.
Pretty much.
Sisters, yeah. Beautiful. Let's talk about Mitch. Because I have known you through a bit of a metamorphosis.
You have.
I knew you pre-Mitch.
Yeah.
And I know you now.
Yeah.
Post-Mitch. There's no post-Mitch. It's just with Mitch.
There's no post-Mitch. Who knows in life? It's the current.
Right? Look, we're not ruling you out. But I have to say that watching you over the last, 6-7 years that we've known each other has been such a beautiful, blossoming. I hate that word, but that really is what it is. It's like I look at photos of you from when I first met you and even photos from the cover of your book, which we'll dive into in detail in a bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're the most yourself that I have ever seen you be. Do you feel like that?
It means so much to me, and I do feel like that. And it's interesting because we've known each other across borders. We've always lived in different cities, but we sort of dip in and out of these moments. And when we have connected, it's been beautiful and deep and like this beautiful sisterhood that you and I just create naturally, probably because our brains are both spicy. But side note to that, the people who know me the most, who enter my home and my inner circle, have said to me the exact same thing. You're finally yourself again. And my dad even said that to me. And it means so much because I think before, my ex relationship, I felt like I was always having to care and nurture for someone else. And I was like this tippy-toer. And I was worried about being too successful, being too much, being too much in the limelight, earning too much money. And once that all fell apart, I was like, sod it. This is who I am. Take me as I am or exit. I don't even care if it's just me and my doggy for the rest of our life. That's okay. And then Mitch entered and he saw me as I am. And I think that was a really beautiful part. And actually, when Mitch asked my dad to marry me, my dad was like, all right, we need to get real about some conversations here. How do you feel if Gina earns more than you? How do you feel if she's on TV? How do you feel if this happens? And fully drilled him. But it was really beautiful to be like, this is who she is. Yeah.
Good on you, Dad.
Yeah.
I ask you that because I feel like you walked through fire to get there.
Oh, yeah.
And as you said, you and I have always lived in different places, but when we have connected, we connected really deeply. And I remember messaging with you during a time when you were really struggling, and you were so open and honest and vulnerable with me. And I thought, and I always find that a really beautiful quality in someone, because I'm such an open book. But from the outside, you looked like you were killing it. You were marrying the man of your dreams. You guys were building this incredible life, and then it all fell apart. Can you take me back to that time, if it's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I was with my ex for 6 years, and I describe him as the man of my dreams. I was head over heels for this human being. I loved everything about him, even his faults. I found them cute and adorable. Like, it was this ridiculous love. And we, during COVID, things started to feel a bit off between us. And he was saying that he was experiencing depression. And so I was just like, how can I support you even more? And whatever you need, we will do. And that created naturally a distance between us, because he's like, I just need me time. I just need to be away for a little while. And I never questioned it. I was like, okay, for sure, like whatever. I knew he wasn't okay, but I thought we were okay. He was very affirming of the relationship, like constantly, I can't wait to come home to you. You're the best wife ever. There was all this stuff that happened. And then one day I was in the kitchen feeling particularly lonely on this day. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do some baking because carbs will always make me feel better. And his computer was on the kitchen bench, and I flicked it open to look up a recipe. And as I did that, I noticed these text messages were popping up, and it was a live text message exchange he was having in that moment with a sex worker that he was about to meet with. And it was this very graphic. His first question was, how much for 15 minutes? And then he asked for a photo. They talked about where her address was, and he's just like, I'm on my way. In that moment,
because his phone was connected to his computer.
Yeah.
So as he was messaging on his phone, you were seeing that in real time on his laptop.
And he said that he was just going out to Bunnings for 20 minutes. And so that's what I thought was happening. And in that, I couldn't describe to you in words what was happening in that moment. My mind was racing. It was still, I was terrified. I was completely in denial, but I couldn't not believe it because there was unequivocal evidence. And I found hundreds more messages like that, and lots of things on the computer that I didn't even know were a thing, like virtual sex rooms and all sorts of things like that. My world shattered. This person who I'll call Joe, his nickname was the Saint. He was just such a pure, beautiful human being who grew up in a family with great values, and just never in my life could I have imagined this would be the narrative that was happening in a story I thought I knew so intimately, but actually was entirely estranged from. I had a panic attack. I fainted. My whole world really fell apart. And when he came home, he denied everything and walked out of my life and out of our marriage that day. It was brutal. What happened in my mind in that moment was my head said to me, if you were so wrong about Joe, what else are you wrong about? Is the sky even blue? Are these people who claim to be your parents even your parents? How do you know? How do you know that brushing your teeth every day is a good idea? Nothing was normal, nothing was certain, and nothing was safe. And I fell apart. It was like the tapestry of my life unraveled, and I had no habits, routines, assurances, skills. It was like I was like this vegetable who knew nothing and could do nothing.
It sounds like, your fundamental trust in the universe was shattered, completely obliterated.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with your habits habits during that time? Because habits are your thing. They've always struck me when we've spoken about them and about your expertise, they've always struck me as a real anchor for you. And I think often when we go through difficult things, anyone, whether it's a divorce or a diagnosis or a whatever, I think we tend to throw our healthier habits out the window. And you just said even some of your, baseline habits of getting through each day, brushing your teeth, those things fell apart for you. What was your experience like with your habits? Were they able to anchor you, or was that lost as well?
That was lost for me. I think normally in a milder stress, those habits anchor me. But in this complete trauma, it was entirely crushing. And because I wasn't sure, I didn't trust, like you're saying, I had no trust. So how can I trust that brushing my teeth is a good idea? Because I trusted this guy was faithful and that was wrong. So how can I be really sure? I don't know. I need to relearn it and work out if it's actually serving me or not. And I had to do that with everything. So I didn't have habits at all. I had to talk myself into doing things like brushing my teeth, like having a shower, like walking out to my letterbox and grabbing the mail. I had to actually think about the process and be like, I think that's a good idea. I should probably start doing that. And it wasn't until I repeated those things that I realized they were getting easier and easier. And that neuroplasticity that I talk so much about was happening. And that's when I started to feel a bit more empowered to rebuild my life with those basic fundamental habits.
It's so powerful to hear you talk like that, because I think often in our industry, people look at quote unquote healthy people and think that health and wellbeing behaviours come really naturally or more naturally to them than they do to somebody else. And, one of my big passions is about closing the gap between knowing and doing. I'm fascinated by the fact that we've got more knowing than we've ever known. And if you look at any of the data, statistically, we're no better off for it. We're fatter, sicker, more miserable, more lonely, more depressed than we have ever been.
Wow.
But habits do feel like a bit of a structure to me to sort of hang your health and wellbeing on, because health and wellbeing can feel a little bit piecemeal sometimes. And one of the things that I've heard you say so many times in the past is that habits are about consistency, not intensity.
Wow.
And that to me really flies in the face of this concept of sort of willpower. Mm-hmm. And I think often people think that to be a healthy person or a successful person or a person who saves or whatever it might be, that you need to have lots of willpower. And I'd love us to explore that in terms of habits and the structure that they can provide as perhaps the antidote to willpower.
Ooh, this is the juiciest question ever. And I love that you brought those two concepts together, because they should get married. This idea of that willpower is a fleeting resource and habits are the only proven method to achieving long-term success. I feel like as a society, we've been disillusioned with this idea, almost this paradigm that willpower is the answer. And if we've fallen off the wagon, we just need more willpower and we need more self-control, making us the problem. But think of willpower like a bank account, and life's demands debit out of that bank account. Things like making decisions, feeling hungry, not having a very good sleep, feeling any sort of negative emotion, being time poor or stuck between a deadline and other responsibilities, self-regulation, all these things deplete your willpower. They're all little debiting from your account. Now, you've only got so many credits in your account before it runs out. It's not an infinite resource. It's very finite. The way to replenish your self-control is things like sleep, rest, meditation, taking periodic breaks throughout the day, having some carbohydrates to eat, feeling positive emotions like gratitude, love, joy. We have to build these things into our every moment, really, to be able to use the unlimited resource of willpower that we're trying to tap into. But life's demands, there's more debits than credits that we can create in our life. That's just how it is, which is why when you start a goal, initially you feel motivated and pumped and you've got all this energy. And then eventually we tend to fall off the wagon and then we go, I wish I had more willpower. And so we start something else, like a new diet or a new fitness plan, when really we're just repeating the cycle of starting, dropping off the wagon, starting, dropping off the wagon with just a new strategy. Habits, on the other hand, don't need willpower. I always say to people, no matter how tired or stressed or hungry you are, you will always put your seatbelt on in the car. You will always tie your shoelace the same way you've done. You'll always brush your teeth. Like, these things happen because they're habits. They're automatic. They don't need energy or cognitive resources. And that's why habits are so important, to have that sustainability and that consistency. That's like the juiciest part of, building a life by design rather than just like living by default.
I love that. It strikes me that I think we use terms like habit and behaviour interchangeably when they're not really the same thing, are they? A habit, we think of a habit as an action.
Yeah.
And it does involve an action, but I'm interested in your thoughts around this concept of, we talk a lot about mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
So eating mindfully, moving mindfully, practicing mindfulness or meditation or whatever it might be. So there's a really interesting play there between mindfulness and subconscious.
Yeah.
Right? Doing things deliberately, deliberate action or behavior versus something habitual. Can you just tease those apart for me?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you asked the best questions, Casey. I bloody love you. So we do use the words interchangeably. We even use things like ritual and routine interchangeably with habits, behaviors. They are all different things. Our habits are the automatic actions, thoughts, or belief systems that we do. They're subconscious, they're efficient, they're generally reactive, and they're triggered by something in the environment, whether that's our internal environment, like our feelings, or external environment, like the time of day or the place that you're in or the people that you're around. Behaviors, on the other hand, are intentional. They're conscious, they're deliberate, they're thought through, even if it's something you've just thought through just before. It could be, how do I get from A to B? Or what should I cook for dinner tonight? Intentions actually come from our prefrontal cortex. So our behaviors come from this logical part of our brain. Our habits come from a place in our brain back in sort of the midbrain, and it's called the basal ganglia. It's where emotions, memories, impulses come from. Entirely different. Those two don't connect. The only way to connect them is through slow breathing. And it's something that we're learning a bit more and more about. But the more mindful we are, the more intentional we are. And therefore, the more we can live within our values rather than our reactions to triggers.
Got it. So, but how does something like, so let's talk through a couple of habits that I imagine, please correct me if I'm wrong, are the common ones that people talk to you about. And I'll give you some context in my own life. So one of the habits that I have recently broken, because we think that it's a lot quicker to break a habit than it often is, that's something you and I have talked about a lot, is drinking alcohol. So I haven't had a drink of alcohol for about 7 weeks, which is the longest I have gone in a long time. And like you, I went through something really difficult last year in nursing my dad and eventually losing my dad. And I realized that alcohol, I knew I was doing it at the time. It didn't creep up on me. Alcohol was absolutely a crutch for me during that time. Often he and I would have a Campari and soda together. So it would often feel like that was my reward for getting through a day. Now, was I drinking too much? I was drinking 1, 2, maybe 3, 4 or 5 days a week. So the NHMRC guidelines say no more than 10 standard drinks a week. I was probably meeting that, rarely exceeding it. So by their standards, it was fine. But for me, I knew that I couldn't keep walking through the door and pouring myself a drink, that was not the way that I wanted to live. It's not the way that what I wanted to model for my children in terms of consumption of alcohol. I have toyed with sobriety or abstinence in the past. I've done a year, I've done a month, I've done 3 months. I've done any period of time that you can mention, and I've been toying with drinking less and less for some time. The thing that I think I've done differently this time is rather than saying, I'm just not drinking till that party, or I'm just not drinking for a month or 30 days or dry July or until the weekend or whatever it might be, I haven't put an end date on it. It really feels like that's the only thing that is different for me now. That's the only thing that has changed. I'm just not drinking indefinitely until I feel like I want to change that.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's been 7 weeks. So what's that? 49 days.
Yeah.
And I have had to replace the habit. I can't come home and do nothing.
Yeah.
I have to pour something else.
Yeah.
It might be a cup of tea. It might be a non-alcoholic beverage. It might be a non-alcoholic beer. There's some really good non-alcoholic beers out there.
Yeah.
How important is that? Is that somewhere where people are frequently tripped up, that they just try to stop doing the thing that they've been doing and they don't try to replace it with something else?
Yeah. Firstly, well done you. 49 days, you've certainly hit the hurdle of the first, like the hard part. So well done. I just want to start off by giving you a little clap.
Thank you.
There are 2 ways to break our habits. For some people, it requires instant and permanent abstinence. For others, it's more about replacing the unwanted habit with something else. And it really is going to depend on the trigger and the actual behavior itself. I've worked with people, for example, who were nail biting, and they were able to just break that habit instantly and overnight by really digging down into their values, realizing that their behaviors and their values, there's a dissonance there. They don't align. And the embarrassment of nail biting was enough for them to get the urge and then be like, I'm not doing that, and just not do that. Mm-hmm. That's actually the harder way. And it doesn't work for things like, I'm just going to walk into the supermarket and not buy a chocolate bar. Saying to our brain, I'm not going to do that, it rarely works. So saying to yourself, I'm just not drinking, and then hanging out in the house, I think it would be torment. And you've probably tried it before and been like, just this once.
Yes, of course. I'll start again tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Or Monday or whatever, right? Yeah. So the idea is that every unwanted habit that we have, every habit or unwanted habit we have gives us some kind of reward. For you, alcohol is the reminder of your dad. It's a reward. It gives you dopamine. It relaxes you. There are so many rewards that come with alcohol, right? So when you completely eliminate that, then you're left with this void of, well, what happens now? Now I'm feeling a bit empty. I'm needing some dopamine. I'm not comfortable in this lack of familiarity anymore, because our habits, our routines give us a sense of comfort. Even if they're not healthy for us, they still feel comfortable because routine feels comfortable for everybody. So replacing it like you have is a beautiful idea and something that I really recommend that people do. I'll actually say to people, we want to create barriers for the habits that you want to break and have facilitators for the habits you want to create. So with alcohol, I always recommend to move, say, your wine glasses to a different cupboard and bring all your tea mugs into the cupboard where the wine glasses were. When you come home and you reflexively open that cupboard and to try to grab a wine glass, you'll be like, oh, that's right, we're drinking tea now. And that will help you through that environmental change. You also want to put the alcohol somewhere that's a bit hard to reach, whether it's a top shelf somewhere, you need a step ladder. And that brings in what we were talking about before, that mindfulness. It creates enough space between the urge and the behavior. And in that space, honestly, lies our freedom, because that's where we get to make a decision. Do I actually want to do this? You've got space for your mind to battle with you, to be like, hey, look, we probably don't actually want to do this. This is not a great idea. And creating that space is really important.
Oh, because that's where the opportunity lies, right? So often we just jump, whether it's responding to an email that has made us feel a little bit spicy, or snapping back at our partner when they've annoyed us with something that they've said, or losing it at our kids, or buying the chocolate bar when we're at the petrol station, or whatever might be one of your favorites.
You've been reading my book.
Don't get me wrong. I'm very fond of a petrol station chocolate bar too, don't you worry. But it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, and I remember writing in my book that often we are so reactive.
Yeah.
And those neural pathways that we have worn through so many times are at the ready to serve us with what we have done previously. But if we can just pause just for a second and take sort of 3 deep breaths. I think part of the challenge, though, is that life is really hard at the moment. I don't know whether it's my age. I don't know whether it's post-COVID. Maybe it's a combination of that and where the world's at the moment. The world is kind of a scary place at the moment, but I feel like we want to reach for those soothers, those self-soothing behaviors or habits, bad habits, more than ever, it feels. Even when I said that I was doing this interview, when I speak to anybody or any of my friends about what they're going through, they're all questioning whether they're drinking too much. They're all worried that we're stepping into sort of perimenopausal time. I've just turned 40. Lots of my friends are stepping into that time. I'm sticking my head in the sand and pretending like it's not happening to me. But I think that like these are the times. Well, perhaps that's a question for you. Are these the times, as we're getting older, as life is getting harder, are those the times that we should be doubling down on our habits? Because to be honest, they feel like the time that we want to chuck them in the bin.
Yeah, it is. It's the hardest times because the more turbulent our life becomes and the less calm we are, the more we want to reflexively reach for those soothers. And they could be anything. They could be binge watching Netflix and staying up too late. It could be snoozing the alarm. It could be scrolling on our phone for way too long. It could be the petrol station chocolate. Whatever it is, we become very reactive and reflexive. We need to double down on the habits that matter most, though, because they can potentially be changing as our environment and our stress levels are changing. As you enter perimenopause, for example, the habits that you need to double down on may be different to the ones that you had in your the younger you had. So you need to still realign your values, your requirements, and then double down on those. And, our brain can only make up to 3 changes at one time. And I'm of the belief, and research supports the idea of changing one habit at a time and getting really good at that. There's a quote I really love. It says, amateurs practice until they get it right, and professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. Do one thing and do it really, really well, and then focus on something else. The self-soothing is really interesting because we see it on a societal level as well as individual level. For example, in America at the moment, the interest rates are apparently super all-time high and people aren't earning as much as they are to make up for the rise of the cost of living. Yet spending on luxury things is also at an all-time high. Online shopping's at an all-time high, impulsive purchasing's at an all-time high. And economists are like, this is mad, it makes no sense. But as a behavioral scientist, I'm like, this makes complete sense because the lousier we feel, the more we want to reach for things that make us feel good. And you better believe shopping makes us feel good. So it makes complete sense.
And the barrier to shopping is so low. If you're scrolling on Instagram, you say, I fell into the trap a few weeks ago. My husband was like, why are there packages arriving at our house every day? I was like, that's just another thing from China that's going to put a light on my face. I'm talking hundreds of dollars. And I was like, I'm so embarrassed that I had fallen into that trap. But I think that, when all you have to do is hit buy now, that makes, as a consumer, that makes perfect sense to me because I'm falling into that trap myself. So would you say that, spending, what's the right term for that? Spending that you don't want, like inappropriate spending or retail therapy?
Yeah, surplus spending?
Yeah. Non-hungry eating. Yeah. You and I have talked about a lot. I was walking around my house the other day and I had pulled out of the cupboard a kid's packet of chips. Mm-hmm. And I love chips. Chips are my thing. I love a chocolate bar, but chips, I'll probably choose chips 9 times out of 10.
Yes.
And I'm not talking 5 chips. I want the whole packet of chips.
Yeah.
And I was walking around. So the only chips that I had in the house were a kid's size of chicken flavour, which is about 19 on my list of flavours. Like, not even that interested in chicken, would never buy chicken. It had already been opened and then tied up with an elastic. So
wait, babe. Who in your house doesn't consume an entire packet of the kids' chips? Who?
So my children open 9 things and actually finish one of them maybe, and that's probably being generous. I'm like, well, maybe they'll eat them later. So I tie the little thing around and I'm like, they can have that for a snack later, because I'm trying to teach them not to be wasteful, right? So if they ask for the thing, they open the thing, then I'm going to save them. So I open this packet of chips. They're the only chips in the house. I'm eating the chips. They are not even borderline stale. They are flat out stale. I ate every single one and I don't even like the flavour. And I was walking around the house thinking to myself, Gina would be having a heart attack. Why am I doing this? Why?
I love this so much.
Why do we do that?
Babe, you're so not alone. I've done the same thing. I've literally pulled food out of the fridge, like not even a plate or anything, be like, this is not even that good, and just continued. I continued to consume it. I've done the same with stale popcorn. Because it still gives us a reward. So firstly, you have anticipatory reward. You anticipate the chips are going to be better than they are. And when they're not as good as you think they are, they're even worse than you think they were going to be, you're already in the habit of eating the chips because you're used to finishing the packet of chips. And not finishing it would be a really foreign behavior. Your brain would be like, that's not what we do, Casey. We don't throw out chips because chips are like our thing. So even if they're not as good, you're still going to have them.
And she did.
And she did, girlfriends.
Oh,
with
my
things like this,
God.
especially when we're stressed, I'm such a big believer of creating an environment that's going to help you. And that's going to look different for every person. For me, for example, I have, say, like no phone zones. I don't have my phone in my bedroom, my dining room. I don't have my phone on my desk in my office, because you better believe if I get a difficult email, the first thing I'm going to do is pick up my phone and start playing Tetris to procrastinate from having to deal with this email. And I don't want that to be something that I do. So I will put my phone in, I've got this lonely little box that my phone sits in. And I have to unlock the box, which means that there's that moment of mindfulness. And it's not because I have a phone use problem. I don't really like scrolling like a lot of people do. For me, I want to practice mindfulness and intentionality with especially with the things that can become problematic.
Intentionality. What a good word. I think scrolling is a real problem. It certainly is for me. And I remember reading or listening to somebody else talking about the fact that these are these micro escapes, right? So if I notice that I do it when my children are giving me a hard time, when I'm feeling particularly tired, when I get a bad email that I don't want to deal with, I'm not scrolling on Tetris. or playing Tetris. I'm scrolling on Instagram going, let me take a quick micro break from my crappy life and have a quick look at somebody else's, which we all know usually makes us feel worse anyway. And it's funny because I would love to know, I think that I'm gone for 30 seconds, but I'd love someone to time me, because I wonder if I do it 10 times a day for even 2 minutes, that's 20 minutes of my time that I'm not getting back. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that we think that we pop off for a quick scroll, and then if we come back to the task, we actually don't get straight back into the task, right? There's a period of time that our brain takes to get us fully back into the task. So we're not just losing the 2 minutes, we're losing at least double that as we then kind of get back in. I think a lot of people listening to this would feel like they really relate to that scrolling. And no matter what I seem to do, I put all sorts of parameters on it. Don't do it in the morning. Don't do it at night. Don't have my phone on my desk. None of that seems to work for me. We know that those apps are incredibly addictive, that there are, trillion-dollar industries working night and day to get our attention on there. I think that that's kind of a very modern addiction.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes, it's powerful. Scrolling in our phone is by far the number one most commonly reported unwanted habit. I've done a survey with thousands of people, and most of the time it comes back with scrolling, and it doesn't even matter the age groups anymore. It used to be a millennial thing, and now it's people in their 60s and 70s are also saying that scrolling is their most unwanted habit, and they've tried all the things and it's really hard. What got me, I guess, out of the habit of scrolling is I've dedicated binge scrolling time, and it's my guilt-free moment. And I do it twice a day. So I might do it sometimes sort of mid-morning when I'm having a break, and I do it at the end of the day, so end of the work day, I should say. My morning session, I'll generally do when I'm like on my stationary bike, or I'm walking around, or I'm doing something else that's not just sitting and scrolling. But that's sort of beside the point. For me, I know that I'm not going to miss out on anything. Well, I'm telling my brain I'm not missing out anyway, because I don't like missing out on anything. Like if I go to a new restaurant, I have to try all the food, every single thing on the menu I have to try. So because I don't have this feeling that I'm missing out, because I know I'm going to check it later, and I know I'm going to check it in the morning, and I'm giving myself half an hour to binge whatever I want in that time, I don't feel like I want to check all throughout the day.
I suppose there is no barrier, right? Because we use our phone for so many other things. And my excuse is always like, well, I need to have my phone near me just in case school rings.
Yeah.
That's always my thing.
Yeah.
And and then I use it as my timer, and I use it as all of those other things. So I'm forever picking it up to do something with it.
Yeah.
It's like I can't walk from one end of my house to the other without feeding myself some kind of entertainment. So I think putting in place those barriers is powerful.
Have you ever truly tried, like genuinely tried to use your phone less? Like when you say I've tried everything, are you like, I've really given it a red hot Casey go?
This is the best question I've ever been asked, and it's so timely because I'm just reading something about discipline.
Okay, yeah.
And we're at risk of kind of counteracting what we said earlier about willpower and motivation and what have you. Discipline is, you're right. The language that I use sometimes is like, I've tried everything. I've tried so hard. And the honest truth is that you're right, I haven't tried that hard.
Yeah.
I've tried a little bit and it felt hard and I didn't like it. So I was like, this is too hard.
Yeah. And you're like, scrolling makes me feel good. It's not even that bad. It's only 30 seconds. Like we can tell ourselves all these things. Trying everything would be, I've deleted all the social apps, the problematic apps off my phone, or I've done it in a way where I have to log into a web browser every time I want to log into my Instagram. And that's a freaking pain in the butt because I've got this really long password. It's actually creating true barriers. There's lots of apps that are tech prohibiting that you can schedule into it. Hey, I only want to use Instagram for half an hour a day. And after that time, lock me out. And you can get ones where you can't just disable the notification and move on. If you really, truly want it, if it really aligns with this point of, you know what, the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change, that's the only time you'll make the change.
It's we often don't give ourselves the time and space to sit down and really consider that.
Yeah.
Do we? I know that it's hurting my productivity. I know that it is hurting my mental health.
Yeah.
I know those things, but I've never really sat down to, and also those things feel transient. To me. So I can have conversations like this and I know what you're saying is right in my bones. And then fast forward 24 hours and real life steps in. And it's funny, isn't it? Those pathways in us are just so entrenched. And in the moment, it does feel like some form of self-care.
Yes.
And as I said earlier, my life does feel hard. It's full and busy and it does feel like a way of rewarding myself. So we need to pick better rewards.
Yeah. Or even maybe reframe it like, why is it problematic? Is it because society tells us that checking our phone is a bad idea? Or is it something that truly makes you feel lousy afterwards? because maybe it's not that painful for you. Maybe it doesn't impact your life as negatively as we think it might. And so your brain's like, look, we don't want to put the effort into doing this. It's a perfectly fine bad habit.
Yes, true. Because it's so unique to us, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't like having things like stick in my lifestyle. Like, for example, I remember one time I was like grizzly about something and I was doing some grocery shopping at the time, and I got not the child's like size packet of chips. I got the family bag of chips, and I ate the whole packet of chips on my drive home. And I remember the next time I was feeling grizzly, I thought of chips, and I'm like, okay, I can see what's happening here. My brain's now associated that I'm going to feel so much better when I'm eating something crunchy and salty, and chips make me feel good about life. And
neurons that fire together, wire together.
Exactly. And I was like, I'm intentionally not going to do that because this is how a habit is created. And I think this is what happens in, my habit-led brain is if I scroll when I'm just having these like lull moments, this will become something that's a shackle in my life. And I don't want that. So I think that's the frame that I put on that. And that's really what helps me go, I can scroll, but it just won't be in this moment of lulliness.
That's right. And that comes back to that intentionality.
Yes.
Right?
We like
really
that
thinking through that. Okay.
Yes.
We like that word a lot. I am obsessed with high performance. And by that, I mean, sure, doing well at our jobs and being better at work, but also being a better parent, being a better daughter, being a better friend, being a better community member. I guess that's what I mean by high performance. Performing, being my best or your best or whoever's best, whoever is listening. What would you say? We've talked about some of the common bad habits that people want to break. So things like non-hungry eating, biting their nails, scrolling mindlessly. We talked about alcohol.
Yeah.
What would you say are the most common habits of high performers? What are the things that you know from working with people for years? Where are the trends or the commonalities? What are they doing?
It is the two things that come to mind straight away are having a regular sleep routine, so prioritizing sleep, and exercising regularly. And they sound so fundamental and so basic. And people are probably like, no, give me something more groundbreaking or a pill I can take. But it's actually about coming back to basics, to those fundamental things. Like, when I do a keynote, for example, there are 3 things I always make sure I do. And if I miss one of them, I know I'm not performing at my best. And they are prioritizing sleep the night before. So I make sure that, if I'm in a hotel room, for example, I've got my no blue light, I've got my eye mask, like I'm in bed early, I turn off my screens an hour before. I put effort into my sleep schedule. The other thing I do is I make sure to have a little workout in the morning because those endorphins really help my brain and it puts me in a good mood and I'm just like ready to take on the day. And then the other thing I do is I make sure to have breakfast. There's so many events I go to that offer breakfast, but I will still take my own breakfast because I know this makes me feel good. I know there's enough protein, carbs, fats in here to balance me out. And I don't compromise on that. I don't need your whatever it is you're serving me that's fancy. I've got this. And it's going back to your fundamentals, whatever it is you need. And they're different for every person, but the fundamentals are the same. It's sleep, nutrition, exercise, and looking after your mental well-being.
None of the quick fixes. Sadly.
No pills. Sorry, team.
Damn it. I love a quick fix.
Me too. But it doesn't have to be hard. Like that workout I do in the morning before a keynote, if it's say a breakfast event and I'm on stage at 7, I might only do 20 minutes, 15 minutes. It's more the act of doing it that makes me feel like I'm in my rhythm. And it's more than enough.
Yes. And I think that a lot of people think that when you start something that you're supposed to start from this, I don't know, imaginary starting line that's not exactly where you are. So to give you an example from my own life, I really want to get better at running. Running is really hard for me. I am not built to run. I'm tall. I've got big boobs. Everything hurts. I'm just not built for it. I was quite athletic when I was younger, but these days I'm just no good at it. But I really want to get better. I'm not going to like run a marathon. I've got absolutely no interest in that. But I would love to be able to run like a 5K or a 10K fun run.
Yeah.
And because I'm a relatively healthy, fit person, people wouldn't believe me when I say this, but I legitimately cannot run for more than, I would say, maybe 5 minutes at an absolute push. This morning, it's Monday. I started my I'm going to start to learn to run program today.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you know what? I've got 20 minutes, exactly what you're saying. I've got 20 minutes. I can't run for 20 minutes, not a chance in hell. What I can do is I'm just going to run for the first 90 seconds, or I'm just going to run down my street, turn left and go to the next street. And then tomorrow I might try to get halfway through the next block. I think people are scared of starting where they are. They're embarrassed by how bad they are at something or how little they can do. And I really want to encourage anybody who's listening to this to know that you just start from wherever you are. No one is watching. If you start and push yourself too hard, you're never doing it again.
Yeah.
You've got to start. So today I ran for the first 90 seconds. Then in the 20-minute period, there were 3 or 4 more times where I ran for a minute.
Aww.
That's good enough for today. Maybe out of the 20 minutes I ran for 5 of them, that's 25%.
Yeah.
Like maybe tomorrow it'll be 30.
Yeah. You know, the power of what you've done as well is you've shown up. Our brain, to create habits, we don't actually need to perform the whole behavior for it to become a habit. You just need to start. That cue, routine, reward these are the 3 ingredients in every habit. It's the trigger, it's the routine, which is the habit itself, and then the reward you get from it. The cue is generally, so the trigger of something. So for you, it's the time of day. And then the habit is going out for a run. When you do that, even if you just do the 90 seconds of that, your brain is still reinforced the habit of, oh, at this time of day, I go out for a run. Your brain isn't like, but we only ran 90 seconds. Your brain's like, no, at this time of day we ran. And that's all it is. And when I love that you were like, okay, even though I don't have the full 20 minutes, I can still show up. And that is such a powerful tool. And I truly believe that it's the difference between people that succeed and people that fall off the wagon entirely. The people that succeed make do with what they have. They show up. They don't see it as a setback, but rather an opportunity to continue growing. And I love that you did that.
Thank you. If you think about that consistency over intensity piece, I think what often happens for me is I'm like, right, I'm going to go every day this week. And by Wednesday, I've fallen off the wagon and I'm like, stuff it. I've stuffed it up.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't try again for like 2 months or till the next Monday or whatever. Yeah. And I think we have to remember it's like those old ads for smoking that's like every cigarette you don't smoke is doing you well or whatever the right tagline was. Yeah. I think that message is really powerful, that it's about what you can do and doing it as consistently as you can. Because I think especially for type A personalities or maybe people who are a little bit neurospicy like us, once we don't have the tick in the box, we're like, yeah, I'm done.
All or nothing.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm going to go and make myself feel better for not having done the thing by buying the family size packet of chips.
Yeah, or scrolling. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I want to finish us off with a couple of audience questions because I'm super mindful of the time.
Yeah.
One is when something is a bad habit, possibly damaging to your health, why is that not enough to stop? I love this question because you could apply it to eating too much sugar. You could apply it to smoking. There's a lot of applications for that.
Yeah.
Health is such a long-term thing. Like the reward kind of isn't imminent.
Yeah.
And she's saying, why is that not enough to stop?
Yeah. We often have competing interests or competing values. We know that this bad habit is damaging our health. but we also know that it feels really good in the moment. And we might not see the damage to our health for a long time. And so it's not that obvious to us. And I think you gave a really good example before, say with phone scrolling. Let's say phone scrolling is bad for your health and you believe that it is, yet you continue to do it because in the moment, it doesn't feel as catastrophic as if you were to look at the cumulative effect of scrolling over years. And a really simple example and quite a tangible idea of that, say, not flossing your teeth. It doesn't feel like it's that bad. Like most people don't floss their teeth. But if you were to look at what your like oral health would look like if you did or didn't floss your teeth after 10, 20 years, you would see the difference. And not only is it impacting your oral health, it impacts your heart health and therefore your longevity and how long you live. So I think that we're not truly connected to the fundamental damage that things are doing to our health. And we have the competing interest of, but this feels really good in the moment and I just need to self-soothe right now.
And we also have that, well, that won't happen to me. It's like our own, we know that we are mortal.
Yes.
We know that it's all coming to an end one day. And yet we, in our heads, think, oh, I'll definitely be one of those people that will live till I'm 90, so I'll worry about that then.
Yeah. Or we think I'll
so
stop soon, like I'll stop eventually. But actually, the more we do something, the more we're reinforcing it. So we're making it even harder for ourselves to stop tomorrow or next week.
But it's so interesting. I read a lot in your book about the steps of habits. So we think about habits as this one action. But it's really not one action, right? So to use my example from this morning about going for a run, that is wake up at the appropriate time to have the time. So turn off my alarm, stand up, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, pull my hair back, put on my clothes, put on my shoes, say goodbye to my family, set up Gina's The Habit Revolution audiobook on Audible, put in my AirPods, set my timer for 20 minutes because that's how long I knew I had. There are these sort of micro steps or micro habits within the habit, aren't there? Talk to me about micro habits because that like really makes my dork self excited.
I love micro habits too. Micro habits are essentially a smaller, simpler version of the bigger habit that you want to create. And like you said, we think of habits as one thing, but they're actually one habit feeds off another. And it becomes a cascade, almost like if you think of water flowing down a sand, like a sand dune, and the water, like it might like snowball and bring more sand with it. And that's how our habits are created. They kind of cascade from what we've just done beforehand. And that's the whole idea of just starting is all we need to do is start, and then the cascade, oftentimes the inertia takes over. Micro habits, when you think of it as I just need to put my shoes on, I just need to put my activewear on and just get out the door. Don't think about the 20 minutes that you're going to run. Don't think about the pain that it's going to be. It's, I just want to show up today. And when you do that, it feels so much less overwhelming for your brain. You're much more likely to be consistent with it. And you're much more likely to show up because it's not as hard as thinking of the 20-minute run that makes your body super uncomfortable.
Leveraging those micro habits. I love it. Okay, last audience question, and then I will let you get on with your day. Are there tricks you can use when you feel yourself backsliding into a bad habit? We're all familiar with that, right? Like,
yeah,
put the brakes on.
There's plenty of tricks. One of them is really being mindful of if you were to slide into this unwanted habit again, what is the damage to your life, and really connecting with that. What will my life look like in 5 years if I slide into this bad habit, and what will my life look like in 5 years if I don't do that? One of the biggest tricks that I love is completely changing your environment. So whatever that unwanted habit is, where you're doing it or when you're doing it, be mindful of that and intervene before it happens. So when we think back to that neurons that fire together, wire together, let's say sitting on the couch equals phone scrolling. So you want to say to yourself, I'm about to sit on the couch. I'm going to be tempted to phone scroll, but this is what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to do some crocheting or knitting, or I'm going to do a puzzle or something to keep your hands busy. But that's not phone scrolling. You can't have your phone next to you and be like, that phone is dead to me.
Don't touch it.
I'm not going to touch it. You have to put it out of reach, out of sight, out of mind. So really create the barriers for that habit and be very intentional about it. You know, the word decision comes from the Latin word decidere, which means to cut off or to strike out all other options. You can't just say, I'll do it for a little bit or I'll do it later. It's like, no, if you decide you don't want to do that, you just don't do that as much as possible. And yes, you will fall off the wagon. Changing our habits is a process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Don't be disheartened by that. Know that the less you do something, the less habitual it becomes. So even if you said no 1 out of 7 days, that's still going to be better than falling into it every day.
It's so true. And I think about that in terms of the alcohol piece for me. And when I speak to other people who are considering trying to scale back or whatever it might be, and I will say to them, even if you choose to do Feb fast, Dry July and October every year.
Yeah.
That's 3 months out of 12 that you're not drinking that's different to what you would have done before. We don't know what the cumulative impact of that will be on your health moving forward. Yeah. What if it's just 1 day less a week, 1 drink less a night? Those things do add up. I think that we need to move away from this kind of all or nothing mentality and just do a bit better. It's my motto.
I love
for 2024.
Do better. Oh, so good. I love it.
I have to let you go. I love you so much. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Oh, so good.
You're the best.
With you. You are. I love chatting with you. We should do it like all the time.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Thanks for joining me for episode 1 of Next of Kin. Isn't she delightful? I love her and I love you. And I'm really grateful to you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please share it with somebody that you love. Tell me what you loved about it, who you'd like to hear from next, because Next of Kin exists for you and the people that you love most. Until the next episode, I'm Casey Barros, and this is Next of Kin. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a medical or qualified professional.